The twins, Aiden and Kieran, had always been different from the people around them, though most never noticed it. From a young age, they shared an unspoken bond, a deep understanding of each other that went beyond words. They moved together in life like a well-rehearsed team, finishing each other's sentences, anticipating the other's needs, and sharing a quiet strength that people often admired without realizing why. Their childhood had been simple, filled with ordinary days, laughter, and small adventures in their neighborhood, but there was always something in them that hinted at a discipline and focus unusual for children their age. As they grew older, that quiet focus turned into action. Both had joined the military when they were old enough, not out of a desire for glory or recognition, but because they felt a strong need to serve, to protect, and to challenge themselves. The years in service had been tough, demanding, and sometimes dangerous, but they had emerged stronger, sharper, and more aware of the world than most people could ever imagine. Yet when they returned home, they left all the stories and experiences behind. No medals were displayed, no tales of heroism were told. To their neighbors and friends, they were simply the twins who kept to themselves. Polite, helpful, and unassuming, their mornings were quiet rituals. Aiden would wake up first, brew coffee, and watch the sun climb over the rooftops, while Kieran would prepare breakfast and make sure their small apartment was tidy. They worked regular jobs in a local hardware store. Kieran as a fitness trainer, and their lives were predictable, calm, and structured. They found comfort in routine and the ordinary patterns that most people overlooked. Every evening they would meet at a small cafe near the park, talk quietly about their day, and watch life go on around them without interference. For them, this simplicity was enough. Life had given them discipline and focus, and now it was offering peace. The twins had learned over time that peace was fragile, especially in a world where unpredictability could strike at any moment. Despite their calm exterior, they were always alert, always aware of their surroundings. A soft smile, a polite nod, a casual glance, these were their tools, not for showing off, but for maintaining balance. Their neighbors thought them quiet, even shy. But those who had seen the spark in their eyes knew there was something more, a readiness that never wavered. One Saturday afternoon, they decided to take a walk through the neighborhood park, a place that had always offered them comfort and clarity. The sun was warm, the air fresh, and children laughed as they played on swings and slides. Dogs ran freely, their owners following behind, calling their names. Aiden and Kieran walked side by side, observing quietly, sharing a look or a nod whenever something caught their attention. It was a simple pleasure, yet to them, it felt like a small victory. The world could still be calm, still be predictable, at least for a little while. As they strolled near the edge of the park, they noticed a small crowd gathering around the corner store. Curiosity tugged at them, though they didn't need to be told what was happening. A few local youths, known to the community for causing trouble, were harassing the store owner, shouting insults and pushing at the display outside. Aiden's jaw tightened slightly, and Kieran's eyes narrowed, but neither spoke immediately. They had faced tense situations before, yes, but they knew the importance of patience and observation. Charging in without understanding the full picture could make matters worse. The store owner, kind elderly man, looked helpless. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to protect the goods in front of his shop. He wasn't strong enough to confront the group, and he was too polite to call for help in a way that might escalate the situation. Aiden and Kieran approached slowly, their movements calm, measured, and deliberate. The gang noticed them and immediately sized them up. They were confident, thinking these were ordinary young men, perhaps too quiet, too polite to respond aggressively. Aiden stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Please, leave him alone. There's no reason for this." Kieran stood beside him, mirroring his tone and presence, creating a silent but powerful unity. The gang members laughed at first, mocking the twins, assuming their words were empty, that their calmness meant fear. But the twins didn't flinch. Their eyes held a steady focus, a quiet warning that spoke louder than any shout could. Minutes passed with an uneasy tension. The twins maintained a respectful distance, offering the gang a chance to step back, to reconsider their actions. Most people would have panicked, called for help, or left the scene entirely. But the twins had learned over the years that confrontation could be handled without unnecessary force. That strength wasn't always shown through aggression. Strength was control, awareness, and timing. And in that moment, they held all three. The gang's laughter faded slightly as they began to sense that these were not ordinary men. Something about their posture, the calm in their movements, and the quiet confidence in their voices suggested experience beyond their years. Still, they were too stubborn, too proud to back down without a fight, or at least without making a show of dominance. It was the beginning of a misunderstanding that neither side fully understood yet. The store owner, sensing an opportunity, quietly stepped behind the twins, relieved that someone had intervened without escalating the situation. He whispered a thank you, grateful that help had come in a form he hadn't expected. The twins acknowledged him with a small nod, keeping their focus on the group. Their minds were already assessing every angle, every possible reaction. They had trained for moments like this, not because they sought trouble, but because they knew that life was unpredictable and readiness was everything, after what felt like hours but was only minutes. The gang finally moved away, deciding that these quiet strangers were not worth the effort. Their pride had been bruised. But they didn't understand why the twins had such an effect on them without lifting a finger or raising a hand. Aiden and Kieran didn't celebrate or gloat. They simply watched as the crowd dispersed, ensuring the shop owner was safe before continuing their walk. Peace had returned, at least for now. The twins returned to their apartment that evening, carrying groceries, sharing a quiet meal, and reflecting on the day. There was no thrill in what had happened, no need to boast. It was simply another reminder that the world was full of unpredictability, and that calm, focused presence could often prevent chaos from taking hold. They shared a small smile, understanding each other without words, recognizing that their lives, though quiet, were anything but ordinary. As night fell and the city lights flickered on, Aiden and Kieran settled into their usual routines, reading, preparing for the next day, and enjoying the quiet. The world outside could be chaotic, unpredictable, and even dangerous. But within their small sphere of understanding and discipline, they found balance. And though no one around them truly knew the extent of their skills or their history, the twins didn't need recognition. They had each other, and that was enough. The calm before the storm was comforting, but in their hearts, they knew life would eventually test them again. And when it did, they would be ready together, as they always had been. Aiden and Kieran thought the weekend would pass quietly, but the encounter at the corner store lingered in their minds. The twins were not the type to dwell on every small event, yet something about the gang's presence and their unwillingness to back down created a sense of unease. They continued with their normal routines, going to work, helping neighbors, maintaining their calm, disciplined lifestyle, but both could feel that trouble had not completely disappeared. There was a tension in the air, subtle but present, as if the city itself was holding its breath. A few days later, while walking through the same neighborhood park, they noticed a group of the same youths loitering near the entrance. The twins observed quietly from a distance, analyzing their movements, gestures, and interactions. The gang members seemed restless, looking around as though searching for someone to pick on or a reason to assert themselves. Aiden and Kieran didn't approach immediately. They had learned patience over years of military training, understanding that timing and observation were more important than impulsive reactions. Despite their calm, the gang seemed to sense the twins were aware of them. They exchanged glances, muttered to each other, and made small movements as if testing the twins' reactions. Aiden and Kieran stayed composed, continuing their walk as though they hadn't noticed, yet remaining alert. Their quiet presence alone created a subtle tension, one that the gang didn't fully understand but could feel. To the twins, this was all part of understanding the situation, gauging the potential risk, and preparing for any escalation without provoking it. Later that evening, Aiden and Kieran returned to their apartment, where they spent time reviewing personal plans and organizing their living space. While the day had seemed normal on the surface, the twins discussed the events privately, acknowledging that the gang's behavior might escalate if not addressed carefully. They didn't see themselves as heroes, but they recognized a responsibility to intervene if others were threatened. Their training had taught them not to overreact, but also not to ignore danger. It was a delicate balance they were used to maintaining. The next morning, Kieran headed to the fitness center where he worked. Aiden went to the hardware store. The city was waking up, people moving quickly to their destinations, and life seemed ordinary to everyone else. Yet in the background, the gang continued to watch and wait, hoping for an opportunity to assert control over anyone who dared challenge them. They had grown bold since the incident at the corner store, convinced that the twins' calm behavior was weakness. They had no idea the quiet confidence they saw was built from years of disciplined training, experience, and an unwavering sense of control. One afternoon, as Kieran was finishing a training session with a client, he noticed one of the gang members leaning against a wall outside the gym, watching him intently. He calmly finished the session, smiled politely, and greeted the member without any hint of fear or aggression. The gang member appeared unsettled by the calmness, unsure if it was confidence or naivety. Kieran walked out after the client left, maintaining a steady pace and relaxed demeanor, but inside, his mind was alert, noting details and preparing for any possible confrontation. Meanwhile, Aiden was arranging new stock in the hardware store when a few of the gang members entered under the pretense of shopping. They wandered through the aisles slowly, making pointed remarks and trying to intimidate him. Aiden remained composed, assisting them politely, as if nothing was wrong. His calm responses, the quiet assurance in his voice, and the steady way he moved through the store created an invisible barrier, one the gang could not easily breach. Frustration began to show on their faces, but they didn't yet understand the twins' experience allowed them to stay calm under pressure. After the gang left the store, Aiden contacted Kieran to share what had happened. They discussed the patterns of behavior, the timing, and the potential risks. They didn't react with anger, but with strategy. They knew that reacting with force could escalate the situation unnecessarily, yet ignoring it entirely might give the gang a false sense of confidence. The twins' conversation focused on observation, awareness, and preparation, and keeping emotions controlled and rational thoughts at the forefront. This was not about showing off strength. It was about protecting themselves and those around them without creating unnecessary conflict as the week continued. The gang's attempts to provoke the twins became more frequent. They would linger near their usual paths, make rude comments, and attempt to block their way. Each time, Aiden and Kieran responded with calmness, respect, and quiet warnings, never losing composure. Their behavior puzzled the gang, whose members were used to instilling fear through aggression. The twins' presence was different, subtle but powerful, and it left the gang uncertain and off balance. During these encounters, the twins also noticed the reactions of the community. People who saw the interactions began to whisper among themselves, curious about the twins' quiet authority. Some recognized the restraint, some recognized the confidence, and some began to respect the calm, disciplined demeanor of the brothers. Aiden and Kieran, however, remained humble. They didn't seek recognition, didn't flaunt their skills, and didn't make anyone feel small. Their focus was simply on maintaining safety, preventing escalation, and ensuring that no one was hurt unnecessarily. One evening, the twins decided to visit the park together after work. The air was cool, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the pathways. Families walked slowly, children played in the fading light, and the city seemed to breathe quietly around them. As they walked, they noticed the gang gathering near the same corner, seemingly waiting for an opportunity. Aiden and Kieran slowed their pace, observing carefully, noting positions, movements, and potential threats. The gang's presence was undeniable, but the twins' calm observation allowed them to remain in control of their emotions. Keeping fear and frustration at bay, Aiden whispered a quiet assessment to Kieran, noting how the gang had positioned themselves, who appeared more aggressive, and which members might act first. Kieran nodded subtly, acknowledging the details, and together they devised a plan to handle the situation if it escalated. This was not a plan for confrontation, but a plan for control, for awareness, and for protection. The twins had learned that preparation, observation, and calm thinking were often more effective than reactionary aggression. As the gang members noticed the twins approaching, they straightened, trying to appear confident, but their movements were tense, uncertain. The twins didn't hurry, didn't shout, and didn't provoke. They walked with quiet purpose, maintaining eye contact and subtle gestures that signaled awareness and readiness. The gang, confused by the calm, were unsure how to act. Their aggression had been effective with others, but these twins were different. There was no fear to exploit, no hesitation to intimidate. It was a new experience for them, and it left them off balance. The tension lasted for several minutes, each side measuring the other, each aware of the potential for escalation. Aiden and Kieran spoke softly to each other, coordinating movements, assessing potential outcomes, and maintaining a calm presence. They didn't act hastily, didn't escalate with words, and didn't respond to taunts. Their silence, their composed stance, and their controlled breathing created an invisible authority that the gang could feel but not define. The twins' presence alone was a deterrent, and it communicated that any aggression would be met with skillful, disciplined response. Finally, the gang members decided to retreat, unsure of what the twins were capable of, but unwilling to test them further without cause. Aiden and Kieran watched them leave, ensuring that they didn't cause further trouble for the neighborhood. Once the gang disappeared from sight, the twins continued their walk, talking quietly about what had happened and noting any patterns or behaviors that might be relevant for the future. Their discussion was calm, rational, and focused on awareness, not anger or revenge. By the time they returned to their apartment, the twins had reinforced their understanding of the importance of observation, patience, and control. The encounters with the gang had not escalated into violence. They had provided insight, experience, and confirmation that their calm presence was more powerful than most people could imagine. They prepared a quiet meal together, reflected on the events of the day, and planned their routines for the next few days, knowing that the situation might continue, but also confident that they could handle it. Evening fell, and the city lights glimmered through the windows. Aiden and Kieran sat quietly, appreciating the simple peace of their home. They didn't speak of heroism or courage, only of preparation, awareness, and maintaining calm in a world that often demanded otherwise. They knew the gang might attempt to provoke them again, but they also knew that their presence, discipline, quiet confidence were deterrents that few could challenge successfully. In that calm, composed moment, the twins understood that strength was not about aggression, but about readiness, patience, and protecting what mattered most without unnecessary force. And they were ready for whatever would come next. The days following the previous encounters were tense, but quiet, at least on the surface. Aiden and Kieran went about their routines, but both could feel that the gang was watching, waiting for another opportunity. The twins had grown used to assessing situations and people, and they noticed subtle signs of planning, glances exchanged, and body language that suggested the gang was considering their next move. Despite this, the twins didn't panic or act rashly. Their calmness was deliberate, a reflection of years of training that taught them control, patience, and the importance of timing. One afternoon, Kieran finished a session at the gym and decided to take a different route home. He walked through a narrow street lined with small shops and cafes, keeping his eyes aware of every movement around him. The gang had become bolder, spreading out across areas the twins frequented, attempting to create a sense of dominance. Kieran noticed a small group standing near the entrance of a bookstore, pretending to browse while keeping an eye on him. He remained calm, moving with purpose, acknowledging their presence without fear or aggression. His mind analyzed their positions, estimated their intentions, prepared for any potential escalation. Meanwhile, Aiden was restocking items at the hardware store when a similar group entered. They acted as if shopping, but their tone and body language suggested they were testing boundaries. Aiden remained polite, assisting them as needed, yet his awareness was complete. Every subtle movement, every whispered conversation, every glance was logged in his mind. He noticed who seemed the most aggressive, who was hesitant, and who might act first, if provoked. His calm exterior masked a heightened awareness, a readiness for action if necessary, but also a restraint that prevented unnecessary conflict. By evening, the twins met at their apartment to discuss the day. They spoke quietly, analyzing behavior patterns and assessing potential risks. Their conversation was practical, methodical, and focused on understanding rather than anger or revenge. They discussed the locations where encounters had occurred, the possible intentions of the gang, and how to maintain control over the situation. Their strategy was simple: avoid escalation, remain vigilant, and be prepared to act decisively if needed. They did not see themselves as heroes, only as individuals aware of their responsibility to protect themselves and those around them. As the week progressed, the gang's attempts became more subtle and unpredictable. They would appear at random locations, make pointed comments, or create distractions, hoping to catch the twins off guard. Each time, Aiden and Kieran remained composed, assessing the situation before responding. Their calm presence created uncertainty within the gang, whose members were accustomed to eliciting fear and compliance through intimidation. The twins' behavior was unfamiliar and disconcerting, leaving the gang members unsure of how to proceed. One evening, the twins decided to take a walk through a quiet section of the city park. The streets were dimly lit, and the air was crisp, carrying the faint sounds of distant traffic and laughter from children playing in nearby yards. As they approached a small bridge over a creek, they noticed the gang gathered on the other side, blocking their usual path. The twins paused, observing the group, noting their numbers, positions, and potential strategies. Their calm, deliberate stance contrasted sharply with the restless energy of the gang. The gang members made small movements, attempting to provoke a reaction, but the twins remained composed. They exchanged quiet glances, communicating without words, silently coordinating their response. Their body language, posture, and measured breathing signaled awareness and control, creating a subtle but powerful presence. The gang, sensing something different, hesitated, unsure how to act. This pause, however brief, gave the twins an advantage, allowing them to assess the situation fully before any confrontation could occur. Kieran spoke softly to Aiden, suggesting an alternative path that would avoid unnecessary conflict while maintaining visibility and control. Aiden agreed, and they began to move slowly, deliberately, keeping the gang in sight without engaging directly. Their movements were calculated, demonstrating confidence and control, yet offering the gang no opportunity to escalate the situation. The twins understood the importance of maintaining a psychological edge. Their calmness and awareness alone were deterrents, preventing the gang from acting recklessly. Throughout the week, the twins noticed changes in the gang's behavior. Some members appeared nervous, their confidence shaken by the twins' consistent composure. Others were more cautious, reluctant to act impulsively. Even as the gang attempted to assert dominance, the twins' presence created hesitation, forcing them to reconsider their approach. This subtle shift in dynamics demonstrated the power of discipline, observation, and patience, qualities that the twins had cultivated over years of training and experience. During one encounter at a small cafe, a gang member tried to provoke Kieran with a loud comment. Kieran responded calmly, maintaining eye contact and speaking in a measured tone. Addressing the situation without aggression, the gang member's attempt to intimidate failed, and the other members exchanged uncertain glances. Aiden, seated nearby, observed the interaction quietly, ready to intervene if necessary, but allowing Kieran to handle the situation with composure. The twins' coordination and mutual understanding were evident, a silent communication that left the gang unsure of how to respond. Evenings were spent reflecting on the day's events, analyzing behavior patterns, and planning strategies for maintaining safety. Aiden and Kieran discussed what had been effective, what required adjustment, and how to remain proactive without creating unnecessary conflict. They focused on awareness, observation, and readiness, reinforcing the importance of discipline in every interaction. Their discussions were calm, methodical, and grounded, emphasizing preparation over reaction, control over aggression. The twins also noticed the impact of their presence on the community. Neighbors began to observe interactions quietly, recognizing the twins' composed demeanor and the subtle influence they held over situations. Some whispered among themselves, curious about the quiet authority the brothers displayed. Yet Aiden and Kieran remained humble, never seeking recognition or attention. Their focus was on maintaining balance, ensuring safety, and demonstrating restraint, qualities that spoke louder than any words or displays of strength. As the days passed, the gang's attempts became more unpredictable, testing boundaries and looking for weaknesses. Each time, the twins remained vigilant, assessing each situation carefully and responding with measured calm. Their awareness of surroundings, ability to anticipate behavior, and coordination with each other created an invisible barrier, one that few could penetrate. The twins' skills, honed through experience and training, were evident not in aggression, but in control, discipline, and presence. One evening, as twilight settled over the city, the twins walked through a familiar alley, noting subtle changes in the environment. The gang had left objects and positions meant to create obstacles, test reactions, or intimidate. The twins observed quietly, moving with deliberate care, analyzing each element without fear. Their approach demonstrated focus, patience, and awareness, qualities that reinforced their readiness for any potential escalation. Even in seemingly small details, the twins maintained vigilance, ensuring that they were always in control of the situation. The gang, unaware of the twins' full capabilities, continued to underestimate them. They interpreted calmness as hesitation or fear, failing to recognize the years of discipline, training, and experience that informed every movement and decision. The twins, however, remained composed, using observation and strategy to maintain psychological advantage, preventing the gang from acting recklessly or causing harm. Each encounter reinforced the importance of patience, awareness, and control, principles that would ultimately shape the outcome of any confrontation. By the end of the week, Aiden and Kieran had developed a clear understanding of the gang's patterns, intentions, and limitations. Their presence created an unspoken authority, one that discouraged reckless behavior and instilled caution in those who sought to provoke them. The twins continued to move through their routines with calm, a deliberate purpose, maintaining awareness and readiness while fostering a sense of stability and safety in their surroundings. Their discipline, observation, and quiet confidence became their greatest tools, shaping every interaction and ensuring that they remained in control of situations that could easily spiral into conflict. As night fell and the city settled into quiet, the twins returned home, reflecting on the week's events. They spoke softly about what had occurred, noting behavior patterns, assessing risks, and reinforcing strategies for maintaining safety. Their conversations were practical and grounded, focusing on preparation, awareness, and restraint. They didn't seek recognition or glory. Their focus remained on protecting themselves and others, maintaining balance, and demonstrating discipline in every interaction in the calm of their apartment. Aiden and Kieran understood that the situation with the gang was not yet resolved, but they were prepared. Their awareness, coordination, and experience allowed them to remain calm, composed, and ready for any escalation. They knew that patience, observation, and controlled presence were often more effective than aggression, and they had cultivated these qualities over years of disciplined training. As they settled into the evening, the twins understood that the coming days would test their readiness, but they were confident that they would meet any challenge with skill, composure, and unity, just as they always had. The day began like any other, with Aiden and Kieran following their usual routines. Yet there was an unspoken sense of anticipation between them. They both knew that the gang's behavior had been escalating subtly over the past week, testing boundaries, creating tension, and looking for any sign of weakness. The twins had handled each situation with calm and awareness, but now, the encounters seemed to be moving toward something more deliberate. It was not fear that they felt, but a readiness born of experience and training. They were prepared. Their focus was clear. Aiden left for the hardware store, while Kieran headed to the gym. Both aware that today could bring an escalation, they moved with purpose, their senses alert to anything unusual. The city was bustling with its usual noise, yet within the ordinary chaos. The twins could detect patterns, subtle movements, and the potential presence of the gang. Each step, glance, and sound was noted without distraction. Their training had taught them to remain calm, while simultaneously observing every detail. A skill that gave them a quiet advantage. Mid-morning. Kieran finished a session with a client and walked toward the exit. Noticing a familiar figure leaning against the gym's front wall, one of the gang members made a slight gesture, signaling others who had positioned themselves around nearby streets. Kieran's pace remained steady, his demeanor unshaken. He greeted the man politely, using a calm voice. Yet his mind cataloged each detail: posture, position, potential threats, and escape routes. He knew the situation was deliberate, a test of patience and reaction. Without confrontation, the twins maintained control simply by awareness and calmness. Aiden, in the hardware store, noticed a group of gang members enter, more confident than before. They wandered through the aisles, making comments and gestures intended to provoke. But Aiden's composed demeanor created an invisible barrier. He assisted customers, arranged shelves, and spoke politely to the gang, never showing irritation or fear. The gang tried to gauge his reactions, misinterpreting his calmness as hesitation, unaware that it was control, not weakness, that he displayed. His subtle shifts, measured glances, and careful positioning made them uneasy without any visible display of strength. By mid-afternoon, both twins recognized that the day was moving toward a confrontation. They met briefly at a cafe, discussing observations quietly and strategically. Their discussion was calm, focused on maintaining control rather than reacting emotionally. They reviewed the gang's positions, potential approaches, and likely actions, preparing to respond decisively if necessary. The twins' communication was subtle, almost wordless at times, relying on unspoken coordination honed over years. Each action and plan reinforced their advantage: readiness without aggression, control without provocation. Later, as the sun began to lower toward the horizon, the twins took a walk together through the streets near the park. They observed the gang gathering at strategic points, seemingly coordinating themselves, unaware that the twins were fully aware of every movement. Aiden and Kieran moved with calm deliberation, maintaining visual contact while keeping a safe distance. They were not seeking confrontation, but they were prepared to act if provoked. Their presence alone began to influence the gang's behavior, creating hesitation and uncertainty. The gang's confidence, built on intimidation, started to falter in the face of the twins' composed authority. The gang attempted a more direct approach that evening, cornering the twins in a narrow alley. The members moved with intent, trying to create a sense of threat, but the twins remained calm, standing shoulder to shoulder, analyzing positions, potential exits, and the gang's likely first moves. Kieran spoke first, his voice measured and firm. "There's no need for this. Walk away while you can." Aiden mirrored the stance, his presence reinforcing the warning. Their calm, deliberate tone contrasted sharply with the gang's aggressive posturing, creating a psychological imbalance that the gang hadn't anticipated. One member lunged forward suddenly, misjudging the twins' reactions. Instantly, Aiden and Kieran moved with precision, deflecting the movement without escalating violence. The intervention was controlled, defensive, and effective, demonstrating skill and awareness without unnecessary harm. The gang was stunned, unable to comprehend the twins' quick, precise, and measured response. Their expectation of fear or hesitation had been replaced by a disciplined, controlled reaction that left them off balance and uncertain. Within moments, the twins had diffused the immediate threat. Their movements were fluid, almost seamless, reflecting years of training and coordination. The gang members hesitated, unsure how to proceed. The twins didn't pursue further aggression. Instead, they maintained composure, holding positions that allowed safe observation while signaling readiness. Every subtle gesture, every calculated step, reinforced the message. Any further provocation would meet with controlled but decisive action. This display of calm authority created a shift in the dynamics. emphasizing awareness and discipline over confrontation. After the initial confrontation, the gang slowly retreated, regrouping at a safe distance. The twins observed their departure, noting which members had acted impulsively and which had shown hesitation. This analysis was critical as it allowed the twins to anticipate potential future actions and maintain strategic advantage. They didn't celebrate or gloat. Their satisfaction came from the control they had exercised and the restraint they had maintained. For them, the outcome was not about dominance, but about ensuring safety and maintaining balance. The evening settled into quiet after the gang's retreat. The twins walked slowly back to their apartment, discussing the encounter calmly. Their conversation focused on observation, strategy, and awareness rather than excitement or bravado. They reviewed each movement, each response, and each psychological shift that had occurred, reinforcing lessons learned and refining approaches for future interactions. Their calm, debriefing underscored the principle that preparation and control were more effective than reactionary aggression. In their apartment, the confrontation, though brief, had tested their patience, awareness, and coordination. They recognized the importance of remaining calm under pressure and maintaining composure even when provoked. Their focus was on practical outcomes. The gang had been deterred. The neighborhood remained safe, and no unnecessary harm had occurred. For Aiden and Kieran, this was a confirmation of the discipline, training, and experience that guided their actions in every situation. That night, as they prepared for rest, the twins discussed the broader implications of their encounters. They understood that the gang's behavior might continue to evolve, seeking new ways to test limits. They were prepared to respond with the same calm, awareness, and control that had guided them through the day. Their strategy emphasized prevention, observation, and readiness, ensuring that any future escalation could be met with precision and restraint. The twins did not seek recognition or confrontation. Their goal was safety, balance, and the protection of themselves and those around them, even as the city lights twinkled through their windows and the streets grew quieter. The twins remained vigilant in thought, preparing mentally for whatever might come next. Their discipline, patience, and coordinated presence had turned a potentially dangerous situation into a demonstration of control and composure. The gang had tested their limits, only to discover that the twins were not ordinary individuals. They were prepared, disciplined, and ready for anything, able to maintain calm and awareness in the face of uncertainty. The stage was set for the next phase, but Aiden and Kieran faced it with quiet confidence, knowing that their training, unity, and focus would guide them through whatever challenges awaited. The morning after the confrontation, Aiden and Kieran woke with a quiet sense of relief. They had faced the gang directly for the first time. Their careful planning, awareness, and composure had ensured that no one was hurt. Still, they knew the situation had changed. The gang members now understood that the twins were not ordinary, and the neighborhood had begun to sense the calm authority that the brothers possessed. Life was never going to return fully to the kind of ordinary peace the twins had once enjoyed, but they were ready to navigate this new reality with the same discipline and focus that had carried them this far. Their routine that morning was the usual blend of simple tasks: breakfast, coffee, checking the small apartment, and organizing their day. Yet there was a subtle difference in the atmosphere. Aiden glanced out the window, noticing familiar faces in the streets, some looking curiously at him and Kieran as they left for their respective jobs. People seemed to sense that the twins had changed the balance of power in subtle ways. While there was no overt celebration, a quiet respect had begun to form. The twins themselves did not seek attention, but they noticed how small gestures, nods, and smiles now carried an unspoken acknowledgement of their presence. At the hardware store, Aiden greeted regular customers as usual, arranging shelves and checking inventory. When the gang members appeared later that morning, it was clear they had been assessing their positions since the previous day. They entered the store cautiously, testing boundaries and measuring Aiden's reactions. He remained calm, polite, and composed, maintaining the same controlled presence that had deterred them before. The gang tried subtle provocations, moving items, blocking aisles, and speaking in low, threatening tones, but each attempt was met with quiet awareness and steady focus. Aiden's calmness seemed to create a kind of invisible barrier that prevented escalation, and the gang slowly realized that they were dealing with someone entirely different from the ordinary individuals they had encountered in the past. Kieran's day at the gym mirrored a similar pattern. Clients moved in and out, fitness equipment clattered lightly, and the usual energy of the gym filled the air. Among the familiar faces, the gang lurked, pretending to browse. But their eyes followed Kieran, watching for signs of fear, hesitation, or aggression. Kieran's movements were deliberate, measured, and unassuming. Every glance, every response, and every posture reflected complete awareness. He assisted clients without distraction, keeping the gang under observation. Maintaining psychological control without overt confrontation, it was a subtle but powerful reminder that presence and composure were sometimes stronger than words or physical displays. As the afternoon unfolded, the twins met for a brief walk together, sharing observations and discussing patterns they had noticed. Their conversation was practical, methodical, and grounded in strategy rather than emotion. They reviewed the gang's movements, noting changes in behavior, hesitation, and attempts to regain confidence. The twins understood that the gang might still attempt to assert dominance in new ways, but they had also learned that preparation, awareness, and coordination allowed them to remain in control. They did not need to react with aggression. Their calm, calculated presence was enough to maintain balance. During their walk, they encountered neighbors and familiar faces, many of whom exchanged nods, greetings, or quiet comments about the recent events. The community had begun to recognize the twins' composed authority, not as a threat but as a protective presence. The twins appreciated the acknowledgement but remained humble, focused on their routines and responsibilities. Their goal had never been to gain recognition, but to ensure safety and stability, both for themselves and for those around them.
Nice.
Quiet influence extended beyond the immediate encounters with the gang, shaping interactions in subtle ways that encouraged respect, caution, and consideration. Later in the evening, the gang made another appearance, attempting to gauge the twins' reactions. This time, however, the dynamics had shifted significantly. The gang members approached more cautiously, aware that previous attempts at intimidation had failed. Aiden and Kieran maintained their calm demeanor, communicating confidence and readiness without any need for words. When one member stepped forward, attempting to create a disturbance, the twins responded swiftly, but controlled. Defensive actions, measured and precise, ensured that no one was harmed while demonstrating capability and preparedness. The gang's aggression was met with strategic restraint, leaving them unsure how to proceed. By the end of the evening, the gang began to retreat, recognizing that their efforts were ineffective against the twins' composed presence. Kieran did not pursue them. Their focus remained on observing, maintaining control, and ensuring that no further escalation occurred. The twins had turned a potentially dangerous situation into a demonstration of psychological and strategic advantage, reinforcing their authority without creating unnecessary conflict. Their calm, disciplined approach had reshaped the interactions, leaving the gang uncertain and hesitant and establishing a new balance in the neighborhood. Back in their apartment, the twins reflected on the events of the day. They discussed patterns, analyzed behavior, and considered future strategies for maintaining safety. Their conversation was methodical, grounded in observation, and focused on preparation rather than emotion. They recognized that the gang might continue to test limits, but the twins' awareness, discipline, and coordination ensured they would remain ready for any situation. Their focus was not on confrontation, but on maintaining balance, safety, and control, principles that guided every decision they made. Over the following days, life gradually regained a sense of normalcy. Though the twins and the community were aware that the balance had shifted, the gang's attempts at intimidation became less frequent, more cautious, and less confident. People in the neighborhood began to notice the twins' presence and influence. Responding with respect and cautious acknowledgement, Aiden and Kieran continued their routines, maintaining calm, composure, and awareness, knowing that their actions had established a protective environment without creating fear or hostility. The twins' ability to handle the situation had not gone unnoticed by others who valued stability in the community. Some approached them quietly, offering gratitude or seeking advice on maintaining safety and calm. Aiden and Kieran responded with humility, sharing observations, emphasizing awareness, and encouraging patience and strategic thinking. Their guidance reflected not dominance but understanding, discipline, and a commitment to fostering safety and respect in their surroundings. As the week passed, the gang's presence diminished significantly. They no longer sought to intimidate or provoke, having recognized that the twins were not ordinary targets. The twins' consistent calm, controlled responses, and strategic awareness had shifted the power dynamic, creating a situation in which the gang's influence was reduced and the neighborhood felt safer. The twins themselves remained unassuming, continuing routines, helping neighbors when possible, and maintaining their composed, disciplined presence. Even in quiet moments, Aiden and Kieran remained vigilant, aware that life could be unpredictable and that challenges could arise at any time. Their experience had taught them that preparation, calmness, and observation were essential tools, far more effective than impulsive reactions. They moved through each day with focus and awareness, applying lessons learned, maintaining discipline, and fostering an environment of quiet strength and stability. As evening fell on the neighborhood, the twins reflected on the entire experience. They understood that their calm, strategic approach had not only diffused immediate threats, but it also strengthened their own sense of confidence, unity, and readiness. The gang's attempts had tested them, but the twins had responded with skill, restraint, and presence, creating outcomes that ensured safety, minimized conflict, and reinforced their authority without violence. In their apartment, as the city settled into night, Aiden and Kieran prepared for rest. They shared a quiet meal, discussed observations, and reflected on lessons learned. Their focus remained on awareness, preparation, and discipline principles that had guided them throughout the challenges they faced. The neighborhood had changed subtly, influenced by their presence, yet the twins remained humble, unassuming, and committed to their routine. Though the immediate threat had passed, the experience had left a lasting impact on both the twins and the community. People had come to understand the importance of calmness, awareness, and restraint in the face of potential danger. The twins had demonstrated that strength was not measured by aggression or dominance, but by the ability to remain composed, observant, and prepared. Their actions had created a protective environment, fostered respect, and maintained peace without creating fear. The story of the twins' encounters spread quietly through the neighborhood, becoming a subtle reminder of the power of discipline, patience, and controlled presence. Aiden and Kieran continued their lives with the same dedication to routine, awareness, and care for others, knowing that their actions had made a difference. They remained vigilant, humble, and ready for any future challenges, confident that their calm, strategic approach would guide them through whatever came next. Their lives returned to a quiet rhythm, shaped by experience, strengthened by discipline, and defined by the balance they had created, proving that preparation, composure, and unity could overcome even the most unpredictable challenges.